How many podcasts in general have 1,000?
Bring it closer.
Closer?
Yeah, or you can, bring back. Yeah, about a first.
Yeah, not many get to 1,000.
Yeah, most don't get to 10.
10 episodes?
Yeah, a lot of people give up after like 5. They do a couple of episodes and they're like, oh my God, I'm not rich and famous after like 5 episodes. They give up.
But the key is persistence, right? Like you got to
100%.
Slog, man.
Coming from the guy that has almost 800 already, persistence is key.
Yeah, there's very little overnight success in a podcast. You just have to grind. And then even when it gets good, then it gets shit again. It's the power is in consistency.
And the next thing you know, you pick up a football club and you're off to the races.
You're interviewing presidents of countries.
Episode 500 was Jeff Booth and Austin Hill. It wasn't a special one. It was just a normal episode.
Do you know what that says? We never got around to preparing something.
Yeah.
You're like, where were we? Was that in Miami, wasn't it?
No, I think that was in Texas, wasn't it? No, it was meant to be in Texas, and Austin never turned up. Do you remember?
Yeah, that was in Miami. He did the tricks, the card trick.
Yeah.
So, like, I don't usually look at the notes, but Daddy sent me the notes. The first note is Gary Gensler is a dickhead.
For ours?
For our show.
Yeah.
I mean, he is a dickhead. Wasn't he people have been sharing something did an interview on TV today?
Did he? I've not seen this.
Yeah, he did. He said that Bitcoin is still speculative and risky and et cetera, et cetera. He was asked if his hand was forced, and that's what he said. Huh. His response was, Bitcoin's volatile and risky.
So he didn't answer the question?
Didn't answer the question, no.
So that says his hand was forced. Yeah. But
also a guy like Gary's, he has his own career motives. He's probably trying to be Secretary of Treasury, and he's not. He also got the ETF through one way or the other, right? Whether he was forced to.
So MIT Gensler is definitely pro Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm. Do you remember how excited people were when he first got that job? Because he used to talk about Bitcoin.
Yeah,
because he would teach. He would teach at MIT.
Yeah,
his courses are still online. They're great courses.
Mm. So MIT Gensler likes Bitcoin. Elizabeth Warren Gensler hates Bitcoin. So it's like, does he like Bitcoin? He clearly likes Bitcoin. He clearly gets it, but his career is more important than humanity. Yep. Which is it. So I think karma got him during the week.
I'd say so.
Shitty release, shitty announcements. Everything went wrong for him. Well, anyway, Sam, welcome back.
Thank you.
It's been, don't want to say 18 months?
A little over a year, I'd say, yeah. I think it was November of 22.
Is that right? We were in Texas, weren't we?
Mm.
Yeah.
And that house that looked like it was put together by
We've stayed
kids.
there a few times, though. I like that place.
Yeah, it does feel like it's been put together by a couple of kids.
Yeah, it's like a tech project.
Well, so what's your favorite American city now that you've done so many tours?
Nashville.
That's a tough one to answer because it's like, I love LA.
LA.
Yeah, I do love it. But I don't think I could live there, taxes, and I love it. And LA just has an energy.
Where in LA?
I love Venice.
Yeah. The beaches there are stunning.
Yeah, I was on what's the Zillow? I was like, right, Bitcoin hits $1 million. I'm gonna get one on Ocean Park.
Yeah.
I'm gonna get this $9 million apartment on Ocean Park Drive.
You can probably look at Zillow traffic and Bitcoin price, and they're very highly correlated.
Yeah, I was like, no, I love Venice. I love it, but I love just all of LA. LA has just like this really great energy. Obviously, lots of weird shit goes on in LA, but it still has a great energy to it.
Well, I mean, California naturally, you've got the mountains and the beach, and there's not many places where you have that combination.
Yeah, I mean, you're an hour and a half south to San Diego. You're 30 minutes from Malibu. You're 35, 40 minutes from Calabasas.
A 2-hour drive to Vegas? 3, maybe?
3. Yeah, I mean, Yosemite, how far are you?
Yeah.
You're a day's drive to San Francisco. It's like, I think LA is amazing. I think the governance is terrible. I think there's a lot of woke, weird shit that goes on there, but the energy is always good. Everyone is like positive, I feel.
We're both East Coast boys. So the West Coast just seems like for me, it seems like a whole different planet. I don't know about you.
Yeah, definitely.
Just culturally and time zone wise.
But listen, we're lucky. We get to we don't have to choose. We just get to do them all. We're here in New York, which is, I love New York. I think New York's really come back. We're going to Nashville. Love Nashville. I'm doing LA and Vegas in March, and then I'm doing Austin and Miami in May. I mean, we just get to do it all. So we don't really have to pick.
Yeah.
And they're all great. Yeah, I like them all. So
What do you think of Miami?
I think Miami's a scam. I think it's a scam city. I feel like everyone is trying to rip me off all the time. I went to the Grand Prix. It was terrible.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a terrible Grand Prix, a terrible experience. I paid $52. Do you know about my sandwich going viral? Get my just literally.
I can't put it up anywhere, but
I will turn around. Search for Miami Grand Prix sandwich. I bet I come up.
you do. You were on like Barstool and stuff.
Yeah, I paid $52 for a fucking
Daily
images.
Mail.
Yeah, Daily Mail, first result.
Yeah, call it Firefest.
It's like a ham and cheese.
$52 for a.
I'm scared I'm going to like knock the audio recording, but here you go. This is Pete's
I think
tweet.
it's $52. $42 Wagyu steak sandwich. That is not a Wagyu steak sandwich. That's 2 bits of bread with some cheap ham.
Yeah.
It's like, are you fucking kidding me? The race was terrible.
We've been scammed so many times in Miami on Airbnbs.
Yeah, we turn up to one where what
In
did
the
we pay?
fucking
Like
hood.
$20,000
Yeah.
for a week.
It was
and
like
a half.
$14,000 something, and it was in the hood.
Yeah, it was
and
It
sketchy as fuck.
was a shithole, an absolute shithole. And so then we had to book another one. We had to pay another $20,000. I just feel like I'm constantly being scammed in Miami.
Okay, so next time you're in Miami, we need to link up and I need to show you the beautiful parts of Miami.
Yeah.
I think most Bitcoiners go to the beach, and the beach is not the same. It's a whole different planet.
Yeah.
And everything's far. It's hard to get there, especially when it's conference season.
Do you live in Miami?
Yeah, so that's home. That's where I was raised.
Ah,
But there's a whole part of Miami that no one seems to have gone to that's beautiful. Xander's seen it
Which
now.
part?
Coral Gables is...
Oh, so we stayed near
Yeah,
Coral
yeah,
Gables.
yeah, it's okay out
Yeah,
there,
it was
yeah.
actually better.
Yeah.
that good coffee place was up there.
That's where we went for dinner with Nick as well.
Yeah. So the thing about Miami is I really like the cultural diversity. Like I love the Spanish side of it. I mean, do you remember that really cool girl we met from El Salvador who was serving us in that restaurant?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and I took my son there. You know, I get ID'd for alcohol in New York. I'm 45. I'm clearly an old bastard. My son was like 19. We didn't get ID'd anywhere. Everyone was serving drink, and he's not even 21.
Yeah. We play fast and loose with rules.
Yeah.
So I like it.
So I like I have a complicated relationship with Miami.
Yeah.
I like it, but I feel like it's scamming me all the time on everything.
It's a bit of a shitcoin city as well.
It is. I think it's a good place to be a billionaire, probably.
Well, it's status driven. So the car you drive matters, the neighborhood you live in
Yeah.
matters, where you go to dinner matters. But again, that's like a certain demographic. You can live outside of that small bubble if you choose to. I've busted out of that now. It's nice. It's pleasant now, mainly because of the diversity. It doesn't really feel like you're in America. I speak Spanish because I have to. You want to pump gas, you got to speak Spanish.
But your background's Iranian, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. How long have you been in Miami?
My whole life.
Oh, right. Literally your whole life.
Yeah. Well, we came over from Iran when I was, I think, a year or so.
Okay.
So I was raised in Miami. I hated it growing up because of the reasons you've just described. Then I went everywhere else, and I'm like, you know what? Home's not too bad. It's got this weird grungy element to it. It's still, not illegitimate, but it's kind of like the Wild West in a sense as well.
Yeah, but I think your home always has a draw.
Yeah.
100%.
Manchester has a draw for you.
Definitely.
Well, not even just Manchester, where you're from. It's
Yeah.
in Mac.
Maxfield.
But I bet there's still a draw to it. To you.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah,
there's nowhere beats it.
Yeah. Bedford for me is still
Even
a
for
draw.
all its flaws, it's still like the best place.
Yeah, I mean, Bedford's a bit better. Bedford's a massive. Where did you grow up?
So I'm right outside of Orlando. I grew up in a town called Winter Park. So
Did you go back much?
no, yeah, everyone always asks. So I must go all the time, like have the season pass to Magic Kingdom and all that. But no, Winter Park was great. It was like a small suburb right outside, like Q-Town. But yeah, Orlando's a tough place to frequent for sure.
Yeah, I don't know. Bedford, I'm drawn back to my hometown quite a bit. I like going back. Yeah, it's just a draw for me. But we're lucky, like I say, we get to see it all. And if you spoke different languages in the different states, there would be different countries. A lot of them.
Yeah, totally.
What was that thing about the guns and the weed?
Oh, is it like in Texas, you'll get arrested and completely fucked over if you have a joint, but you're all right with a gun. And New York is just like polar opposite. You're fine if you're smoking weed like anywhere, but have a gun, you're fucked.
Yeah.
But it's the same country.
Yeah. So which one's free?
Is America free?
Neither of them is probably the answer.
Yeah, you do not want to get caught with any sort of artillery in New York City. That's for sure.
Or California, for that matter. Yeah.
How free is America?
Depends on who you ask, I guess. Depends on your income bracket, I think.
I mean, anyway, we should be talking about ETFs and rug pulls.
Not guns and weed.
This is the bit where
The ultimate often, yeah.
that guy commented, he's like, I don't listen to what Bitcoin is anymore because they talk shit for the first 10 minutes. That's the best bit.
Yeah.
All right, so listen, look, ETFs are here. We can't stop them. I think there is a mixed set of views with regards to ETFs, right? There is a bunch of people who will say, yeah, this is great. It's more eyeballs for Bitcoin. It's more marketing for Bitcoin. Cool. And there's other people like, no, this just creates a big centralized pool of Bitcoin, which could be 6102'd, or it could be rugged, or whatever. There's like all this risk, big centralized pool. And I mean, Xander, I spoke to you first, and Sam spoke to you as, what do you do about this? Like, what do we do about these companies that might rug us in some way, accidentally, on purpose, whatever? It's something that I know a lot of Bitcoiners think about. And Xander was like, we've been thinking about this.
Yeah. So, I mean, just to start with, I think, so my perspective on what the Bitcoin sort of revolution, if you want to call it, like what this looks like over time has changed. I think this idea that we're going to just take a bulldozer down to the old system, which is a building, and then replace it with this new thing, I think is short-sighted and maybe a bit immature. I think what's probably
Did
gonna
you
happen,
used to think that?
Yeah, for sure. Especially when I got in the space when I was 25 or so. So very much like, let's burn everything down. I just don't think that's how it's going to happen. I also don't think that's the best method forward. And it's never really what I think or what I want. It's sort of what will happen or what we expect to happen. I think it's more like, I don't really know if the Chinese demolish buildings this way, but I've seen videos where it's basically like floor by floor, brick by brick sort of thing. And I think we have to replace elements from the old system and replace them with the new one over time. And that's how you build this new structure. I don't think it's going to be this like chaotic, nightmarish event that happens overnight. I think it'll be a slow process. And the ETF, again, Xander's much more embedded in, or has been embedded in traditional finance than I have been, but I think this is one step in that direction. It definitely makes it more legitimate.
I mean, Bitcoin growth has been slow, really, when you think about it. And when you think about Bitcoin, you're like, or when you grok it, you're like, oh my God, why does everyone not understand this? Why do my friends not understand this? Why isn't everyone putting it? You just have to grok it. And I think it's slow, but I think it's necessarily slow. I don't know if that's an accident of design or that's just the way it is. But I think if you had a fast transition to Bitcoin, it'd be bloody, nightmarish, dystopian, and hell. If everyone tomorrow woke up and said, you know what, fiat's fucking bullshit, let's get into Bitcoin. One, the network couldn't handle it, and secondly, everything would collapse, and we'd have a lot of death and blood.
Yeah, but I mean, slow. I mean, relatively, right? It's been like what, 15 years.
15 years, yeah.
I think it's pretty fast. I don't know.
No, I mean, we've done well to get where we are after 15 years, but like, how many people really truly own like Bitcoin bearer instrument?
Yeah,
millions, maybe. 10 million, 20 million?
Yeah, I mean, the learning curve is different for everyone. It's funny because over the last year, I've sort of taken a step out of the Bitcoin sort of echo chamber and wanted to see what it looks like in the real world and how people think about this thing. And yeah, I agree. People still don't seem to get it. We're still very early. It shocks me because my friends are on Twitter and I can't really believe that we're the ones that are ushering in this new money standard, but it's true. It's happening. But again, like a lot of innovations, it's usually very risk tolerant people that may not have as much to lose as people otherwise, that are the ones that usher in this new thing, and they have the appetite for that risk. So it's not so uncommon, I guess. Yeah, I mean, the ETF again is just like, I think it's going to be an accelerant. But
what did you find when you went out there? Like, what were you trying to do? Were you like, oh shit, I'm in an echo chamber, I need to really get out? And
I mean, everyone that I'm friends with within the Bitcoin space agree with me on everything. And so, but the world still is the same. And so either we're wrong or we're early or we're missing something. And so when I went out into, like the rest of the world, I just realized that people, for whatever reason, don't seem to, just don't see it. And I don't know what it is. I think we have a unique set of a unique set of sort of skill sets, a unique way we look at the world, and a unique set of experiences that brought us here. And not everyone shares that. So, I guess back to your point, it is slow, but it's, probably in line with any kind of new technology, any kind of new innovation.
I think there's a couple of reasons why. I think trying to explain to somebody, those dollars you have in your bank account that you've used your whole life, physical dollars and a credit card you you now need to replace it with this new decentralized system that was invented by, decentralization basically means the government can't switch it off. It was invented by this guy called Satoshi Nakamoto. By the way, we don't know who he is. Got no idea who he is. And this decentralized system is run by, like I said, nodes and miners. And and you have to have like when you start to explain it, you sound fucking mental. It sounds stupid. But I think there's another reason people struggle with adoption, because the thesis is solid. Can you get that Natalie Smolensky?
You're not going to make me read this tweet.
Yeah,
again.
I am going to make you read this tweet again, because do you know what? She actually solidified. She actually articulated something that I've been struggling to articulate very well, and I think it's to do with risk tolerance.
Danny, like individual investors?
Well, let Danny read this. I think it
She
just makes
said,
sense.
many people would rather be certain that they will lose money slowly by pretending monetary debasement doesn't exist than take slightly more risk to make money slowly by waiting through volatility.
So, like, all my buddies, all my friends at home, they've lost 10 to 20% of their purchasing power over the last year, and they maybe had some small pay rises. And I turn around to them and say, you know what you need is Bitcoin, and they think of Bitcoin as this yo-yo. Like, what the hell? And when you're being debased 5 to 10, 15% a year, it's a stable debasement. It's slow, it's insidious, but it's not like you suddenly go to a bar and it's like, I want a pint of beer, it's £5.60, and you go the next day and it's £7.20. It's like it might go up to £5.50, £5.60 over the space of a few weeks. And so you can kind of like psychologically manage that. And that's across everything you're buying, right? Whereas you try and convince them, well, you should really put your savings into Bitcoin. Okay, I'll put my 20,000 into Bitcoin. Okay, I've got 15,000 the next day, and then I've got 22. Like, it's hard to make that transition.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's I think 2 points I want to highlight there. One, the idea that the government isn't your friend is so radical for, Americans particularly. That the government, may not have your best interest at heart is hard for a lot of people to accept. So that's already a mental blocker. On the economic side, my bachelor's degree is in economics, and I was taught Keynesian economics.
Yeah,
I think the Austrian school was mentioned maybe in one class, but we really had no exposure to what a hard money standard would look like. And so, maybe there's I don't know if it's a psyop, but maybe there's some like propaganda that's also been ingrained into our culture too, where people think that you need to print money in order to have a functional government, and you need to print money at an irresponsible scale in order to have a functional economy. Well,
if they taught hard money standard as part of economics at school or university, I studied economics at school. I did an A level in economics, and it was all Keynesian. I feel like it was like 50% of what we did. Like Keynesian economics came up and up and again. If they taught a hard money standard, everybody leaving school and university and studied economics would go, the government is entirely wrong on what they're doing. And I don't think it's a conspiracy. I think we're being taught what suits the government. And you sound crazy when you try and say that to your normie friends, but why would we arm a generation of kids every year to understand that everything the government is doing is counter to what is best for the people?
Yeah.
Why would we do that?
Yeah.
So I don't think it's conspiracy. I just think.
Do you think it's intentional or just a byproduct of the system?
Of the system.
I think it's an organic system of incentives.
I think if you ask your economics teacher from high school what he thought about Austrian economics, I don't think he'd have an answer. I don't think he would understand.
Right.
He might be like, that's that radical thing.
Right. I'm not even sure they'd know what it was.
Yeah, potentially.
Well, because there was a filtration system, process to get them to that point anyway. So you would have been filtered out if you had these positions early on.
Yeah.
Yeah, most of these things, I always want to ask myself the question, is this malice or organic?
Right.
And I often come back to organic because I haven't met that many evil people, but I've seen many evil outcomes to the way things are organized. And I think we're all driven by greed, right? So that works in a perfectly designed Bitcoin system where we want miners to be greedy. But when you take that into a system where you can cheat it, the same greed leads to an organic system of evil outputs. And so I just think it's a badly designed. You want a system. If we're all greedy, you want a system that's fair. You don't want to be able to cheat the system. So the Bitcoin works because we can all be greedy, but you cannot cheat the system.
Yeah,
we have the same set of rules. We all have to abide by consensus, right? We go into the fiat system. do we all have the same rules? Do I have the same rules as the bankers? The Bank of England have the same rules as the government? It's clearly not.
Yeah. What's the term? It's socialism for the banks or something, and capitalism for like the common man, something along those lines.
Oh, I know what you mean. It's the well,
Because I don't get a bailout if I fuck up.
yeah. What was that thing? It's bailouts.
Privatize gains, socialize losses. Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
so-
a more optimistic take on what you're saying, and I don't want to go into a philosophical tangent necessarily.
No, please
but
do.
I don't know if it's. I don't know if it's. I mean, I don't know if it's greed so much as it might just be survival. I think within our system, greed is rewarded. I think like criminal greed is definitely rewarded. But no, I think most people that I know, I don't know if I would call them greedy. I would just call them inherently survival based, and they're going to do whatever they can to survive. And because incentives are so misaligned here in the U.S., survival looks different for different people.
This is also too like when you mentioned earlier, like there's no quick way to understand or become a Bitcoiner. These are all things that what we're doing and building from the Bitcoin community is creating a new monetary regime that kind of corrects this entire system of, let's call it oppression for, basically the masses. If you're on the fiat standard, every day your currency is being debased, there's hyperinflation, and there's also not wage inflation to also match consumer inflation. So everything's getting more expensive and your money's worth less. So the grassroots growth from Bitcoin, from the cypherpunks all the way through to this ETF launch, it's an amazing thing. And just from like broader signal in the macro, the ETF getting launched is really exciting because now you have the traditional financial world being able to remove the veil of opportunity. So not only are they going to orange pill themselves just by the nature of self-education as they get deeper and deeper down the rabbit hole, but also things too, like they'll start to quickly learn about layer twos and lightning and how, different payment rails might be able to fit in their business model. So that to me is really exciting from what this means just from a signal standpoint all the way through.
Well, so the thing I hadn't thought about with the ETFs is portfolio construction. It came up yesterday when we were, was it James and?
Yeah, James and Alex.
I hadn't really thought about that, but the reality is I remember when I had a pension, I don't anymore because they're dumb. But when I did, I had these like 3 questions about risk tolerance and blah, blah, blah. And then they just went off and constructed me a portfolio. And every quarter I get an email and this is how your pension's doing. It's up 5% or it's even, whatever. I never looked at what they'd invested in. I just know they just invested a bunch of stuff. And I think a lot of the Bitcoin investments from the ETFs is actually be quite passive investment. People aren't going to realize they own it. The asymmetric opportunity exists in portfolio construction.
100%.
And so I think there's going to be a huge amount of investment in Bitcoin by people who don't know they're investing in Bitcoin, just because it's that right 1 to 5% of a portfolio, and so it's like it is like another Trojan horse, and so when I was like previously quite negative about the ETFs, and I actually think it's like another useful Trojan horse to accelerate what we're trying to do, but I don't see it as like see it as a bunch of people are going to suddenly be getting Bitcoin ETFs because they're available and they're suddenly going to go down the rabbit hole. I think a lot of people won't even know they're owning or it's not part of their portfolio.
Yeah, which kind of goes back to our reason for existing. I don't know for the boring guys in the room or what it may be, but if all this passive money does come into the Bitcoin ETFs, we're talking about a massive market. Billions in inflows.
Do we know what the inflows are so far?
I think the first day was like 4.7 billion, was it? Something around
No,
that.
that was liquidity. So but the actual inflows.
Oh, sorry. Okay. That was volume traded the first day.
Yeah, I thought I saw something earlier that said like the only outflow was GBTC, which was 95 million.
Which makes
I
sense.
think Bitwise had about 220 million, but they said they were seeding theirs with 200 anyway. So I think it was about 400 million inflow.
Yeah, that sounds right. It was in the hundreds of millions. I can't remember the exact
Yeah.
number. I thought it was closer to 5. But
Yeah,
maybe it was 4.
If Bitwise was 200, it can't be 400 in total.
I've got it. So Bitwise was 238 million. Fidelity was 226. iShares Bitcoin Trust, IBIT, that's BlackRock, that's 111. ARK was 65. Franklin was 50. Invesco was 17. Vanek was 10. We don't have Wisdom Tree was like 1. But we don't have Valkyrie or Hashdex
Core
yet.
wisdom tree.
Yeah. And Grayscale was minus 95. So that's what, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, it's about half a billion inflow.
Yeah.
Interesting commentary that came with that. With I think it was Hunter from Bitwise said this isn't a 2-day measuring stick. Like,
Of course.
don't judge it after 2 days. This is not. This is long term.
Yeah. It's a medium and long term play. But again, so if all this money's flowing into these products, and especially if we get into like lending ETFs and actually rehypothecating this thing, we need to make sure that Bitcoin's there. And I think we have a responsibility too. It's like for us, it seems so obvious. And I guess optimistically enough, like James Seyfarth and these other people, like a lot of these other big time analysts have mentioned proof of reserves already, organically, which is great. We need to verify and make sure that these things exist. Bitcoin's built with auditability in mind. It's built with auditability baked into the asset itself. So that needs to be exploited, especially if you're talking about institutional investors coming into this thing. This necessarily isn't gold. You can audit it in a very unique and in a very intimate way. And so the idea that we don't do that is beyond reckless.
Okay, let's go back a step because not everyone may have heard the first show we did with you and covering Hoseki. Do you want to explain what you do? By the way, we don't normally allow people to come on and just discuss their product, but because we don't want product shows, but this is such an important product for what's happening with ETFs. Yeah. Can you just explain to people what you guys do?
Yeah, should I give a little intro as well?
Yeah.
That's what's helpful.
Sorry.
Do us a little better.
No. I mean, I think luckily we're not like well known. I don't know. It's not something I envy. My name's Sam, founder and CEO of Hoseki. Prior to Hoseki, I was at Fidelity. So I come from Wall Street. There I was a director in their Bitcoin incubator. So mainly working on things like open source Bitcoin custody solutions, some Lightning research, and zero knowledge proofs. And towards the end of my tenure, I helped co-author a paper called The Practitioner's Guide for Proof of Reserves with the Digital Chamber of Commerce, along with Nick Carter, KPMG, Deloitte, and a few other firms. The objective of that paper was outlining how an exchange or custodian can become compliant with proof of reserves. This was published, I think it was maybe March of 21 or so before FTX, but after Mt. Gox and everything else that happened. So there's a history portion, there's a auditing taxonomy, and then there's my bit where we explain how to become compliant with proof of reserves. So I created Hoseki because of a problem I was having, which was trying to get a mortgage with my Bitcoin. The counterparties, banks and lenders, just had no way of assessing my assets, especially if they're on a cold storage device. That problem still exists today. We don't really have a way of exploiting Bitcoin's, one of its basic properties, which is expressing ownership over these property rights that you have. These property rights exist and they're baked in, but we don't have really tooling around financializing Bitcoin, which is really Hoseki's objective. We think in order for Bitcoin to become what we think it can become, it needs to have the proper tooling and infrastructure in order to financialize it. So that's Hoseki. Now that same framework can be applied for retail investors who are trying to get a mortgage or a loan, but can also be applied for custodians, exchanges, and ETF issuers as well. So our argument is that we should be aggressively transparent with Bitcoin holdings because we've had this incredibly sort of rampant history of exchange insolvencies and hacks and outright scams. And so because it's easy to scam someone with Bitcoin, and because it has these transparent property rights baked in, we should exploit that latter part.
Just a quick side point on that. So if I wanted to borrow money in the UK, I don't think the banks would, if they wanted my assets, interestingly, I don't think they would care about Bitcoin. They want to know cash and other things. Are people starting to take Bitcoin as an asset seriously here?
Yeah, it's so there are specific demographics, and we found most success with sort of smaller regional banks, credit unions. Frankly, cannabis forward banks, because they're more risk tolerant. They already address a sort of risky demographic, and so they're kind of open to addressing another demographic, which is us. I don't think we're the same as sort of people that are in the cannabis space necessarily culturally, but from an investment standpoint, from a banking risk lending standpoint, they evaluate us the same. So I'm not too sure about the UK, but yeah, we're seeing a lot of traction here in the US, mostly at the local level.
I mean, I know it's coming, right? At some point, people are going. Even people who are hesitant around Bitcoin are going to suddenly realize, hold on, this is a credible asset, and people hold Bitcoin, hold something of value. I get that. And look, and even if they want to market as like 50% of the actual value, as like a credible part of your personal liquidity, then great, fine. But at the moment, I definitely don't see that in the UK. But yeah,
No, so the strategy we're taking is less of it's not as aggressive as sort of when I first started the company, we were as aggressive as possible. Like we're holding pristine collateral, as our friend George McKell says. This is pristine collateral. You should assess this. You should give people loans based on their Bitcoin holdings and the fact that they're long-term holders of Bitcoin. We've softened that. There's been a lot of success because of that. Now we're saying just build a more complete financial profile of your customers. You don't have to take a financial action on that. You don't actually have to extend them credit because they have Bitcoin, but at least be comfortable in assessing that data and incorporating it into who they are as a borrower. So doing that is, I mean, it's a marketing advantage for a lot of these banks. They're trying to differentiate themselves. So being open to this new demographic is massive when they can say, hey, we're open to Bitcoiners. And that's just the first step in order to actually be able to get a Bitcoin loan.
and there's no industry that needs us more than our industry.
Right.
We are plagued with rug pulls or Sam Bankman-Fried types. One question that does come up often is you can prove reserves, but you can't prove liabilities.
Yeah, correct.
Where does that play into what you're doing? Or is that just something we have to accept, but let's just start with reserves?
Basically, that's been my argument since the FTX crisis. There was a lot of Bitcoiners were highlighting that point in particular, that the liabilities are kind of there isn't really a good solution around liabilities. There's Merkle systems you can build, and maybe you can do some fancy stuff with zero knowledge proofs, but ultimately you're relying on internal books from a party who's feeding you that data. There isn't a ledger on liabilities. There is a ledger on the assets. And so my argument is FTX had zero Bitcoin. If they were transparent or required to be transparent in some capacity about their on-chain assets, we would have seen that get depleted in real time or in some real time fashion.
The hilarious thing is
early.
The hilarious thing is though, people thought they had amazing OPSEC because no one could find their Bitcoin. It just didn't exist.
Well, they did have it to begin with, didn't they? They sold it all off.
Yeah. But I mean, you would have seen that, and so our argument is it's probably less about preventing things like that, but more about mitigating that risk. And the more controls and transparency you are able to put in place, and the more regimes you can construct around these companies, the more risk you're mitigating necessarily. So my answer to this is always, it's not perfect, but it's better than nothing.
It's the don't let good be the enemy of perfect.
Exactly. Exactly.
Or is it don't let perfect be the enemy of good?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the other way around. Yeah. And so at least we have some information, and you might not have known FTX's liabilities, but if you didn't know their reserves, well, if you just started to see them deplete, you would have exited early.
Right.
And probably they wouldn't even have tried the fuckery they tried because they've known everyone would have seen it. I think it's almost like if you know there's a camera watching you all the time, you behave differently.
Right. I mean, they probably would have tried something, but it wouldn't have been at the scale that they did ultimately. They just wouldn't have been able to.
So what's the fear with the ETFs then?
Same thing. We both come from Wall Street, but I mean, 2008 is a great example. Yes, there's auditors. Yes, these are big brand names. They have amazing, sort of compliance teams internally, and they have their controls in place. But I don't like the idea of blindly trusting when I can't have something verified to me. And the whole ethos of Bitcoin is verify and don't trust. So I think the ETFs are no different. If we build a massive financial ecosystem on top of these ETF products, then we need to, with absolute certainty know that spot Bitcoin, the thing it's backed against, exists and it's there. And we can do so with very little overhead too. It's not expensive to do so, unlike gold. So gold, for instance, gold ETFs are audited, I think at max twice a year if they actually are audited. So I think there's like an optional clause depending on the ETF product itself.
And what are they auditing?
The physical gold.
But when you say it, the volume, or they checking every single bar that it's not tungsten?
That's the thing. It's not so clear. Right, exactly. So are they scanning each one to make sure they're actually full of gold and not bullshit? Or are they looking at the number? Is it a combination of the two?
Because you think about it, if they had to test every single bar for it not to have tungsten inside it every single time, it's unfeasible.
There's no way they're doing that.
They can't do that.
Yeah.
But this would be like a Deloitte or a KPMG going to a vault and checking golds there, right?
Yeah, right, basically.
But the difference here with when it's Bitcoin, you can live 24/7, 365 constantly know 100%, it is real good Bitcoin.
In real time.
Yeah, in real time.
Exactly.
So that's a very unique property versus gold.
It's different, and I think we should acknowledge that Bitcoin is like gold, but it's not gold. It's the best analogy we have, but it's not the same asset. A car is not a horse.
Yeah.
It functions similarly in some ways, but they're very different things. So I think now, hopefully, we start evolving past the gold narrative. The gold narrative has helped us up until this point to really like orange pill the boomers on this, or sort of sell them on it as best as we can. But I think now we should hopefully start breaking away from that and identifying this thing as a completely different asset entirely. And maybe people now start saying, well, gold is similar to Bitcoin instead of Bitcoin is similar to gold.
Well, it's like an MP3 isn't a record. And there's some things where I think I prefer a record for, because it's authentically, I like putting my needle on the record and hearing that sound in my lounge. When I'm in my lounge at home, I listen to records. I don't listen to MP3s.
Right.
Even though there's a little bit more effort, right? But an MP3 does so much more for me. I can take it around the world. Yeah, anywhere I want to. If I don't have it, I can suddenly get it. I can't do that with my records. That's the analogy that does work for me. In that Bitcoin, I can take it anywhere around the world with me.
Well, and going off of that, I love gold jewelry, but I want my money in something else.
Yeah.
So I still like gold. Gold's great, but it's just I use it differently than I do my savings for my future generational wealth, hopefully, and for my children.
Yeah, and look, industrial-wise, I can't compete with gold with Bitcoin. But I don't use gold in an industrial way.
Right.
If we're talking about money, Bitcoin absolutely kicks its fucking ass.
Yeah. No, it's unparalleled. I mean, just an example off the auditing gold ETFs, or just continuing on that track. The last time there was a comprehensive audit of the Federal Reserve's gold was in 1953.
Yeah,
Eisenhower administration.
This is the rumor, right? Do they actually have any? Is Fort Knox just a warehouse, an empty warehouse?
I wouldn't be that surprised, man. I usually the crazy things are what actually are true and what actually happened.
But no one can get in there and see, right?
People have there was a bill that was proposed, I think, in 2021 about auditing the Fed, and it just fell on deaf ears.
Why would it fall on deaf ears if you had the gold?
Right.
Come and see.
Exactly.
What do you got tired?
So I think their points are it's too expensive, it's too cumbersome. I mean, all the same arguments.
See, what they should have said, just give us one photo.
Yeah.
Yeah, we just wanted one photo inside.
Or better yet, just put a 24-hour camera in there and just show it live in real time.
I don't think they have the gold. I just don't.
I don't think they have the gold they should have. I don't know if it's empty, but I don't think they have as much as they claim they have.
I don't think they
frankly.
do. Okay, so what is it you're proposing here then with these ETFs? Because it's bad enough when we lose an exchange, but when we lose an exchange, it's kind of like internal to us.
Right.
It's like in our world. And look, FTX stretched out beyond our world. Yeah, I know some senators were very upset about it. Yeah, we got a book about it. We may get a film, but it's still within our world. If a Fidelity rugs us and goes to shit, or even a Bitwise, who are kind of our world, or if BlackRock have a problem, that's the rest of the world. We're in TradFi, right? And so what is it you're proposing that can or should be done?
Yeah, and we're definitely not highlighting anyone in particular and saying, we think they're risky at all. We just think
you want them all to do it.
We think everyone should. I mean, again, you can be transparent. It's not gold because you can steal Bitcoin a lot easier than you can steal gold. And because it has those property rights built in, then you should be able to express it. So for us, it's sort of, I think in 10 years, this will be very obvious. Obviously, we should be auditing Bitcoin in real time. Obviously, we should be auditing the custodians who hold Bitcoin on behalf of ETF issuers in real time. It's just like, it's a no-brainer. I mean, Xander uses this point about corporate hygiene, right?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, Bitcoin is designed with the intrinsic ability to be fully accounted for. So now that we take this new frontier in the traditional world, the key learnings that we've all gone through as Bitcoiners, these are all key learnings that should be applied as it relates to this very new, first of its kind ETF instrument that is backed by Bitcoin. So for us, not only is it a differentiator for issuers that are first to do it, but it definitely is a corporate hygiene thing in terms of just fiduciary mandates and responsibilities as it relates to not only the ETF, but the custodians, also the exchanges. These are all things that benefit every leg of the party, where the consumers benefit, the issuers benefit, the custodians benefit, and it removes this era of, oh, we've been doing this forever like this, so trust us, it's going to work out. When in reality, we can verify it. So why don't we just verify it? And it's very, very simple to do so. It's not like a big engineering lift. It's as easy as exposing the wallet addresses and letting us, essentially, verify it for you.
Yeah, and I think the key learnings from the industry is critical here, because I think a lot of the people in the traditional space just don't know the history of exchange hacks, don't know that it's easy to rug people with Bitcoin. And because of that ignorance, then they may not think it's that important. But we've definitely got the bruises and the scars to.
Yeah, I'll say in the last 24 hours, I've probably had 20 or 30 financial advisors that I know personally reach out to me and just ask, which one should I buy?
It's so funny you should say that. I was about to, let me bring this up. Where is it? Okay, some guy messaged me today. Podcast's been great. Any thoughts on the best spot ETF to buy? And I was like, I said, buy Bitcoin the asset. He said, I have that. I want to move some of my 401k into a spot ETF. I was like, oh, okay. Well, they're all basically the same. So lowest fee wins really.
Yep.
If just one of them had proof of reserves, I'd be like, oh, Bitwise, they've got proof of reserves. Go with them.
Yeah.
It's certainly a differentiating factor. I mean, and it's again, like, it will become very much a norm. I think you mentioned 10 years. This is something that the market will respond very quickly, because it's going to become a standard. And then once it's a standard, if you don't have it, it's very sketchy.
Yeah,
and
like,
then,
why have you not got it?
Yeah, exactly. And so, I mean, there's competition over a few different things. One is just the brand name. Two is fees. But we really think competition over transparency is going to become like the next thing, like very, very soon. Like,
I think you can even kind of start to see that. So Bitwise of like, I don't know if it's 10% of profits are going to go to OpenSats, and then Van Eck have come out saying they're giving some to Brink. Like, these are like competitive advantages that they will take advantage of.
Yeah.
So I think as soon as one does proof of reserves, I just think everyone will do it.
Well, they're trying to differentiate themselves.
Yeah. I mean, these are marketing ploys at the end of the day, which again isn't a bad thing. But again, they have to differentiate in some capacity. And so the best way to differentiate is, hey, we're trustworthy. Here's how we're trustworthy.
What happens if one of them comes to you and say, we absolutely want to do proof of reserves, but we want exclusivity and we will pay way above the odds. We'll give you more than you would if you had everyone.
No, I mean, so the ETF proof of reserves for us isn't a massive revenue driver. It's really, again, corporate hygiene. It's about building a robust industry. And so you have to have, again, like, I don't believe in like sort of like blanket altruism necessarily. I don't know if that exists, but this is sort of altruistic enough where we think like, so Hoseki has to exist regardless, right? You have to have a property rights system. Well, the property rights system exists. You have to have the tooling to exploit that. Now, we think we're the ones that are going to do it, and we're best suited to do so. But we believe this needs to exist regardless. And apply to the ETF product, it's the same thing. We would never just do one, because again, for corporate hygiene, for a robust industry, you have to have complete transparency across the board, and it only makes Bitcoin better.
Basically, everyone needs Hoseki. Ideally, anyone in this kind of environment. Okay, so
yeah, we're not going to get in the business of selling ratings and doing all that mess.
Right. Yeah. So interestingly, one of the things I've been asking or trying to figure out with this is, I don't fully understand the mechanics of an ETF. You might be able to explain this right now to me, but say I go on and I bid I want to buy, and I buy whatever the share is. Say it was $100 and I buy $10,000. I don't actually fully understand. Do they, at the point I click buy, they immediately buy that $1,000 of Bitcoin? Does that happen? And if they do, is there any slippage? So I think the amount of Bitcoin an ETF holds compared to the share issues, there's going to be some fluctuation between what it should be and what it is. Imagine there is. And so one of the things, again, I can be completely out of my depth and you guys say, Pete, you're a fucking idiot, you don't understand this. But like, that's one of the things that would be good to know is who is managing how tight their Bitcoin collateral is compared to the shares issues. That's going to be something we're going to want to know, because like they might only be 0.5% out, but they might be.
Yeah, and that is a lot. Am
I completely wrong here?
They've got the best market makers in the world on this.
You're only saying that because we heard that yesterday.
No, but the way that they'll
I'm
happen is
teasing you.
they will hedge their risk instantly on like futures markets, and then they'll fill it at like almost as close to spot as you can imagine. Like they'll be so tight on those spreads.
I think it was brought up last night. I think James said they actually make the purchase end of day, right? Something like that.
They've got until the end of the day to fill it.
Right. So theoretically, yeah, there would be slippage, but I don't know myself.
Yeah, but again, I don't know this. I don't know. Is that something you want to know? Is that something you would compare against ETFs? Who is best at managing their slippage? All of this is just an unknown to me.
Yeah, and I think in that example, I think James said the ETF issuers are technically on the hook if there is. But I don't know.
Yeah, it was all outlined. And then with that too, like each fund will have different volume, like based off of the unique profile of the ETF. And it's all like laid out very specifically. But at the end of the day, the best way, if you don't have to buy an ETF, the best way to get exposure to Bitcoin is to buy Bitcoin. So what it's great to do is, again, it brings in a new ecosystem of traditional investors, which is incredible, not only from the fact that, you can say, Bitcoin has really made a monumental victory here in the fact that now it pulls in the global financial economy into a world where they can actually have exposure to it, which is great. And then the way, orange pilling and just general education works, you're going to go deeper and deeper down the Bitcoin rabbit hole because that's just what you do when something new comes out. And you'll start to see, more institutions, I think it's going to be great for all of the companies that have had really great products and not had the opportunity to get in the door in breaking this, the enterprise level, because they just get, essentially, it's a great idea, but we just are not going to be first to the fight. Now I think you'll start to see a lot of those victories happen. For years, while I was working at Strike, for instance, we did, endless calls with, traditional retailers or, institutions of all kinds. And by the end of our first meeting, they would just say, we really get it. This is amazing, but it's unlikely we'll be first to this.
Okay.
So now I think with this, you'll start to see a lot more responsiveness to things like whether it's Bitcoin as the asset, if you will, and then the technology rail, which is this open monetary network that's interoperable 24/7, which is very, very unique.
Yeah.
We always talk about gold in relation to it, but these are completely different things.
Yeah.
So what's the ideal scenario here? Like every ETF issuer has Hoseki, and anyone who's going to buy an ETF, they will know whether or not they're
If they're verified. Yeah. So again,
and if they're not, I'm assuming they're done immediately.
In terms, well, it depends on how the market reacts to that, but theoretically, yeah. So the point is, don't trust when you can verify. Number one. Two, with respect to, because auditors get brought up a lot as well, but auditors are they sue each other constantly for bad opinions. And again, FTX had auditors too. So yeah, what we think is going to happen is the sort of greenhorn funds, the smaller funds, are going to be more responsive to being compliant with proof of reserves because they really need to differentiate themselves, especially if they're competing against BlackRock and Fidelity. And then that'll slowly trickle up to the bigger names once it becomes de facto standard.
And I'm guessing you've spoken to some of these. How open are they without giving too much confidential information? Like, are people ready for this? They want to do this? Yeah,
the response has been more optimistic than I expected, frankly. I thought we were going to get sort of hung up on when we started to bring up transparency, like voluntary transparency, right? Because no one's forcing them to be compliant right now. It's voluntary transparency. But no, they get it. Seems like they understand the asset that they're using. And for them, it's from a selfish perspective, they want to be like first mover in an industry. So the response has been incredible.
It's really complexity to you supplying this. So, for example, everyone keeps bringing up Coinbase as the custodians for this, but the truth is we know people are going to actually distribute their risk across Coinbase, Gemini, and multiple custodians because you'd be idiotic to 100% trust Coinbase. So is that a complexity? Is that a complexity of what you've got to supply?
In terms of conducting the proof of reserves?
Yeah.
No. It's not complex at all. And that's what we promote as well. That's for sort of, we're not sort of guiding them to strategy, but we do offer opinions when we can and when we're asked. So that's what we've been proposing as well, is definitely diversify across custodians because you don't want to have that you don't want to be left with that risk. So no, that doesn't complicate things at all, and I think it makes it a more compelling product at the ETF level, but also at the audit level as well.
Are we expecting some kind of dashboard that's like company shares issued, Bitcoin held,
Verified.
it's verified? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It'll evolve over time. We're limited based on the information that we can get from exchanges, depending on or the exchange or the custodian that we're working with. So it'll evolve over time. I think by end of year, it'll look different than it's going to look like in the next few weeks. But yeah, effectively, it's going to be a public dashboard that everyone can go to at any point, see the Bitcoin in real time, and know that it's there with certainty.
So I understand you do the proof of reserves based on addresses. How do you do the the part where you know what they should be holding, or is that up to the person look at the proof of reserves to then go and double check against the shares that have been issued, or are you going to tie that in?
That's what I mean. It's going to look different over time. In the beginning, it's just going to be the on-chain asset. So we want to make it as simple as possible for these issuers, and we don't want to make it overly complicated. They've got their legal departments that are ready to provide so much overhead.
So there's going to be analysts on Twitter who are going to do this work for you.
Yeah.
And a lot of that other trading data is already available. So it's very easy to plug in the real-time market data. It's as available as us just Googling it and pulling it up on the internet or getting direct Bloomberg feeds if we need to. But at the end of the day, this dashboard, or the platform that we'll host, will not just be the ETFs. It'll also be exchanges, custodians, companies that are holding Bitcoin on the balance sheet, of all kinds. So this is a goal not only to have transparency across this next wave of call it orange pilling, but also a resource for legitimacy across the full spectrum, which is really exciting and obvious. I know this word keeps coming up in this conversation, but it's not a hard lift. And what we're doing is providing it in a unified view that allows companies not only to check the box in terms of, okay, I'm not going to hide these assets. I'm going to be actually very proactive with it, and that's what's the first step here with this. And then being a source of education, so being very clear with what we're seeing, how we're getting it, and being very, very transparent with even our data.
And you've already seen this because remember we did the proof of reserves for Real Bedford.
We did.
I think you were our first user for that specific feature. Yeah.
Is that still going?
No, I can't remember why. I think because I moved the
Did you rub
reserves.
everyone?
No. No, do you know what it was? I moved the reserves into a Unchained multi-sig.
Okay.
And I don't think I updated it with you. I guess it doesn't change on that. But
this was over a year ago. I can't remember exactly, but you moved and then I just don't think we followed up or something.
Yeah.
We'll get you back on there.
But I also stopped because I used to do the transparency report, and then I stopped doing the transparency report.
Bad ideas.
Well, they're very good ideas early on. They're very bad ideas once people want to attack you.
Yeah.
When people support you, they're like, "This is great. You're being transparent. Oh my god, you're amazing." And then when people get jealous, they're like, "Go fuck yourself. What are you doing?" So it comes from.
You don't need to showcase that.
It comes from honest intentions, but yeah.
But I do think this goes back to the cultural piece you're talking about, because you have to have a good understanding of Bitcoin culture in order to understand why this is important. Because there isn't really a precedent for any other asset class that functions like this. So for you to be told, you should be aggressively, overly transparent with this thing in a way that you aren't with any other asset is a hard thing for most people to accept. But if you understand the cultural, sort of ethos of Bitcoin, and you understand the objective of transparency, I keep harping on about this point. Bitcoin's cool, right? We like Bitcoin, but I think the coolest thing about Bitcoin is the auditability. And I don't come from the audit world. This again for me is just an obvious thing. It's no one knows how much gold exists in the world with any real certainty. No one knows how many US dollars exist in the world with any real certainty. But we can genuinely audit Bitcoin. Any third party can. I can run up a node right now and audit to the smallest unit and know that it actually exists. You can't say that for any other asset, both at the macro level of the total supply, but also at the individual micro level. I can prove to you with certainty that I own this amount of Bitcoin.
So how does this work when there's a little bit of fuckery going on? So you should probably talk about what you're worried about with kind of paper Bitcoin, but some of the conversations are, what if one of these custodians of Bitcoin wants to generate some kind of yield of it? They start doing something, lending it out, whatever. They start wanting to generate yield on this huge honeypot that they've got.
I think that's a real concern. I think at least a few of them will try that.
Yeah. I think I saw a tweet about this. I think it was matching up on-chain data with DTCC data, something along those lines. Yeah. Yeah.
And at the very start of this too, like right now there's maybe a quarterly audit or annual audit, maybe once or twice a year. So going from that, which is just like check it out every once a year, to being able to have, maybe it's real time live or day close every day, you'll be able to see the Bitcoin holdings, and then let, the auditors of Twitter just blow everything up if they're doing malicious things, is the beauty
Well, what
of
if they're
our
not
space.
malicious, or they're done with good intentions of their own? So, like, I don't know, BlackRock said, "No, we got $1 billion of Bitcoin sat here that's not doing anything." I mean, we get in our whatever basis points on it, but we could probably lend some of this out and earn some yield off the back of it. Where does that fit in the world of proof of reserves? Because they might have lent some of it out.
They might. Well, again, so back to the proof of liabilities and proof of assets part, you can definitively prove the on-chain assets exist. So based on the economic activity that's happening on top, you can somehow match them together and make a case on whether or not like this is being lent out in an irresponsible extent or not. So again, that data is in BlackRock's books. There's no ledger on it necessarily, but you can certainly look at reality, which is on-chain funds, and what they might be doing, and draw some correlations there and see if it matches up or not, or if it checks out.
Could it be a case, though, that say they've lent out 25%, you can't track that, but you have to say, well, on-chain says they've got 75%. To the user using this dashboard, we're like, well, they're missing 25%. I'm not going to use those. But actually, they're just lending it out, which, by the way, I think would be a terrible idea. But tracking that bit would be very difficult.
At that level, yeah. I mean, again, you're going to have to somehow look at the data on that like secondary market or so, and there are going to have to be some assumptions run on it as well. But this is going to evolve, and we're going to make it more robust. Or we're going to have to make it more robust over time. Not Hoseki, just the industry as a whole. A lot of this is unknown. We don't know what they're going to do with these ETF products. My perspective is be as vigilant as possible, and definitely don't be optimistic necessarily, and don't have wishful thinking about how these people are going to be treating this new asset. But just verify first. Don't trust, and then we'll evolve and make it more robust over time.
Well, listen, look, it's totally needed. I'm I don't want to say I'm pro ETF. I see the benefits to the world of these ETFs. I worry about a rug pull. And when Xander reached out, I was like, are you going to do something about this? And he said, you guys are. So I think it's going to be very cool. But how long do you think we're going to have to wait till we can actually see?
Well, Xander's pretty doomer about this. You think they're
come on, doomer boy.
Well, no, just that there's real existential risk here. That's kind of your perspective.
Give us the doomer take.
Yeah, no, it's more so just around the reality of things. I think taking anything for its word is just risky in general when you can have the opportunity to verify it. So when you have the issuer, you have the auditor, and you have the custodian, there's a lot of opportunity for malicious behavior when it comes to self-attestation, and not having the third party, unbiased third party coming in to be able to verify and just prove what you're saying is a very just in general risky thing. So this from we say corporate hygiene or fiduciary just responsibility, really, to be able to, because you have such easy ability to conduct this, not doing it is again, I think, extremely irresponsible
and suspicious.
And very suspicious. So we've talked to a number of issuers. There has been, like Sam mentioned, we've had a lot of great feedback so far, not only from the issuers, but also analysts and the surrounding community around these launches. So we'll start to see some of these things rolling out, hopefully relatively soon, now that all the legal work is done to get them approved, which is really exciting. And then again, what we're building from a company perspective is we are trying to financialize Bitcoin. So not only just doing this for the ETFs, but also bringing this all the way back down to the consumer. So for instance, we talked about getting a loan or proof of funds. Like this is a very early inning for a very long trajectory to financialize, a new monetary regime in the real world. So it's selective participation from us as Bitcoiners to say, no, you're not going to see my whole stack, but I'm going to share enough Bitcoin with you so I can go buy a house, or I can get credit, or I can, do whatever I need to operate in a world that, until it becomes, hyper Bitcoinization, we have, you can use your Bitcoin to live in the real world.
Yeah, and I still fundamentally, and hopefully this changes over time, I still see Bitcoin itself as a third world country, as a developing market. We have a lot of civil strife internally. Yeah. Our infrastructure isn't great. Our roads aren't paved. And similar to the third world, we have assets, but we don't have any framework of expressing those property rights. So there's a book that I constantly mention called The Mystery of Capital. And that book highlights this exact point, which is that people in Egypt, for instance, are quite rich in the assets they have. They save, I think, on average 4 times the amount that they get from like foreign aid, as an example. So they are quite advanced in terms of saving and planning, but they just don't have a good legal framework to assess their ownership. Bitcoin has that baked in. So we think exploiting that framework is what makes this into a developed market, into a developed country.
Wow, sounds awesome. I look forward to seeing it. Tell people how to find out about Hoseki.
Yeah, on Twitter, we're Hoseki.app, so Hoseki app. I'm Sam Abbassi with 2 B's and 2 S's on Twitter. You can also reach me at sam@Hoseki.app.
Right, it's Friday afternoon, Friday evening. Let's go and get a beer. And thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah.